Hey, it's Chris, back today with what I really feel is gonna be one of the best iPhone X reviews on the planet. Here's how it's gonna go down. As it just so happens to turn out, and I promise I did not plan this, there are 10 things that I think you really need to know about the iPhone X. 5 good and 5 bad. I'm gonna fill you in on those, and then additionally, I'm gonna provide you with some extra context. Just like many of you might be considering doing, I upgraded to the 10 from the 7 Plus, so I'll let you know how that transition went and whether or not I think it's worth doing. Also, at the very end of this video, there's gonna be a flagship Android comparison, so you definitely don't wanna miss that. There's a lot to cover today, so let's jump right in. This video is sponsored by IonBoard. The base model goes 22 miles per hour, has a 12-mile range, is water resistant, can handle grades of 20%, and only costs $399 right now on Kickstarter. Personally, I really love the option to customize the grip tape. And if you want a speed and range upgrade, then check out the IonBoard X, which also comes with a Canadian maple deck. To pick up the IonBoard that's right for you, then hit the link down in the description. Now, just as a quick side note, I'm a real iPhone user. The iPhone X is my daily phone. The iPhone 7 Plus was my daily phone before that. I've been a longtime iPhone user. This is not one of those reviews where someone just takes it out of the box and films it without changing anything, and it's clearly all stock. Now, just for fun, let's start with the 5 bad things first. The number 1 bad thing about the iPhone X for me is the steep learning curve. Because there's a new interface with new gestures and no home button, things work differently enough from the way that they did before to temporarily throw you off just a little bit. It's different enough that for the first 1 to 2 days that I had the iPhone X, I was feeling kind of unsure about it to the point where I was wondering if it was a mistake, both for me to own and for Apple to have made. It really felt very foreign, but by day 3, I had completely adjusted to the point where I was ecstatic about this new phone and I would never want to go back to the 7 or the 8. And that's for real. Nevertheless, there are so many new things to learn that I actually made an entire video about it, which you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it already, and I'll make sure to leave that link down in the description. Somewhat related to the new interface, and yet worth mentioning all on its own, is that Notification Center is now a little bit harder to get to. Instead of swiping up from the bottom of the screen like you're used to, now you have to swipe down from the top right to the right of the notch. And depending on how you're holding the phone, that's either a pain or downright impossible to do one-handed. If you don't want to use 2 hands, you can use the iPhone X's version of reachability, which I'm glad is there, but I definitely don't like as much on this phone. Now, this next thing is really barely worth mentioning, but I've seen so many reviewers mentioning it that I kind of wanted to set the record straight. If you get the new iPhone before like February, then yeah, some of the apps are not going to be optimized for the new layout. The first day that I had the 10, a lot of my favorite apps were broken, but a ton of updates came out the next day, and now it's very rare for me to see an app that doesn't work on the iPhone X. Now, the keyword here is work, because unoptimized could mean apps that are completely broken or apps that just have digital bezels on the top and the bottom. There aren't many broken apps at this point that just don't work, but there are still several apps with the digital forehead and chin, which is frustrating but usable. And most importantly, most likely temporary. The next thing to note is that the all-glass design is gorgeous. Stunning, really. Okay, so why am I not listing that under the positives? Well, it's pretty simple. You're gonna have to throw a case on here. There's no getting around it. It's not a rugged design right out of the box, and that means that you're gonna have to cover up all the beauty. And once you get the 10 in a case, it kind of loses some of that magical feel. All of a sudden, it's chunkier, and it's just not quite as thrilling. Of course, you could live on the edge a little bit and walk around like a phone streaker with a naked iPhone, but in that case, you're definitely gonna have to have insurance. And that is exactly why this awesome design actually ends up being a little bit of a bummer. The final negative that's worth mentioning for me is just the price. This thing is really, really expensive. Okay, but the real question is that price worth paying? Well, stick around for the next 5 items because those are all the positives. Real quick though, I just wanna say none of these negatives are deal breakers for me. They're really more like minor annoyances, to be honest. And wait a second, before we get any further, why didn't I mention the notch as a super negative? How come I didn't jump on the notch bashing bandwagon? Well look, I'm only gonna say this once. Before you get the phone, you think that the notch is the greatest blight any designer ever inflicted upon the face of a phone. But after you get it, you realize you basically never ever notice the notch. You immediately learn to live with it and basically just ignore it. The one time that the notch can get weird is in landscape mode, like when you're watching a video, but guess what? That's optional. You can zoom in or not and have the notch get in the way or not. It doesn't even happen by default. So the notch is not a big deal. It's not even a small deal. It's completely fine to live with. Now, there are so many good things to talk about here that it's hard to pick a place to start, so I'm just gonna start with the screen. The 10's gorgeous, almost edge-to-edge screen feels super luxurious to use. It's really bright and the colors are excellent. The second awesome thing is how nice the phone is to use and hold and how well it fits in your hand for having such a tall display. It's actually a bigger display than what you get on the iPhone 8 Plus. It's 5.8 inches compared to 5.5. Plus, the 10's display has a higher resolution. So don't kid yourself and you don't have to wonder about it anymore. I'm telling you, the bigger screen in a smaller form factor is awesome. Next up is the TrueDepth camera and Face ID. Now, this is a major addition to the iPhone X and it's partially responsible for you having to learn some new things. But at the same time, it's also partially responsible for enabling some new features that you just can't get on any other phone. Personally, I love the Face ID. I was super skeptical about it when I first heard about it, but it turns out to work really well. Is it 100% perfect? Well, no, but neither was Touch ID. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't miss Touch ID at all. And I guess this is the right time to mention Animoji, which are legitimately fun to play with. I actually sent one to everybody I knew the first day I had my phone, but at the same time, I wouldn't call them a reason to actually buy this phone, honestly. But they are really fun though. There's one more awesome feature that I really wanna mention here because I feel like it's super easy to overlook in all of the iPhone X hype, and that is the dual optical image stabilization in the rear camera. This time around, both rear lenses have OIS, and having it on that zoom now is really a major improvement. It feels like a major upgrade because of the two lenses, the wide angle and the zoom is definitely gonna be the shakier by default. So to not have to rely on digital stabilization, but to actually get optical stabilization there is a real world improvement that you're definitely gonna notice. So that's really everything that I think you need to know about the iPhone X before you make a purchase, but don't click away just yet because I've got some more stuff to share about upgrading from the 7 Plus, as well as that Android comparison that I promised earlier. So now that I've been using the 10, how do I feel about the 7 Plus? Well, I can summarize that in 2 words. Clunky and unwieldy. Again, the taller screen with the smaller form factor is just a killer combo on the X. If you're worried about that learning curve that I mentioned earlier, I would say don't let that stop you. It's completely and totally worth it to upgrade to the 10. Once you learn how to use it, the screen is better, the cameras are better, and I feel like it's just a better overall experience. If you're coming from a Plus model and you're unsure about how this is gonna fit in your hand, maybe you like that bigger, chunkier phone, then I would say give it a try. If you've got a plan that lets you upgrade every year or maybe even every month, then definitely go for it. I think you're gonna like it, and guess what? Apple's probably gonna come out with the Plus model next year. Okay, so for anyone wondering how the iPhone X looks and performs next to a flagship Android device like the Note 8, well, here you go. This section of the video is just for you. Interestingly, each of these phones lets you unlock it with your face. Face ID on the iPhone tends to work smoother and it's also a bit more secure, but the Note 8's face recognition is definitely usable. And there's no question about it. You get more screen real estate with the Note, but that also means that it's bulkier. If you want an always-on display, a headphone jack, or a stylus, then of course the Note delivers in all those departments where the iPhone X doesn't. On the iPhone side, you've got the True Tone display, TrueDepth camera, and a wider, brighter screen. The iPhone also has much better graphics performance, but the Note 8's battery lasts a little bit longer. And now we come to the camera comparison, which is definitely the most overdone thing on YouTube, which is why I included it here instead of in a separate video. Now on the design front, I think that these are both really well made and well designed phones. I happen to like the iPhone X's design better, but that doesn't mean that I hate the Note 8 or anything. I like them both, I just like the iPhone a little bit better. But speaking of designs, these phones are both very slippery without a case. Okay, so that is it for this video. If you're thinking about getting the iPhone X and you're fine with spending that much money, I would definitely say go for it. I think you're gonna end up like me and you won't even look back. I'm gonna have links to everything that I mentioned and everything you see here on this set down in the description, so make sure to check those out, especially if you're bored. There's some fun extras down there as well. And don't forget to tune in every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for this channel's main weekly uploads. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.